34 million years ago, on the west coast of what is now North America, something ridiculous happened. A storm knocked some trees into the ocean. Some iguanas were on those trees, and those iguanas, clinging to their logs with absolutely no say in the matter, began the longest ocean voyage any land animal has ever made in the history of Earth, 5,000 miles later. They arrived in Fiji. Here's the thing about Fiji that confused scientists for 150 years. Fiji is one of the most remote island groups on Earth. It sits smack in the middle of the South Pacific. It has 4 species of iguana, beautiful bright green lizards. And iguanas live nowhere else outside the Western Hemisphere, North America, South America, the Caribbean. That one dot in the middle of the Pacific made no sense. How did iguanas get there? The ocean between North America and Fiji has no stepping stones, no chain of islands they could have island hopped across. No land bridge ever connected them. For 150 years, biologists had theories but no solid answer. Let's talk about how far 5,000 miles actually is. New York to London? 3,459 miles. The iguana's journey was longer than that. The entire width of the United States coast to coast is about 2,800 miles. The iguanas traveled nearly twice that distance. On a floating tree, in the ocean, with no food supply, 8,000 kilometers, 1/5 of the entire circumference of the Earth. The new study, published March 17, 2025 in the journal PNAS, calls it the longest known transoceanic dispersal event of any terrestrial vertebrate ever documented. Iguanas hold the world record. Accidentally, the breakthrough came from DNA. Lead researcher Simon Scarpetta at the University of San Francisco collected genome-wide DNA sequences from over 200 iguana specimens gathered from museums around the world. The entire iguana family tree mapped in DNA. The DNA told a clear story. The Fijian iguanas, genus Brachylophus, are most closely related not to South American iguanas, not to Caribbean iguanas, but to desert iguanas from North America, specifically the genus Dipsosaurus. Desert iguanas, common in the hot, arid deserts of the American Southwest. Co-author Jimmy McGuire of UC Berkeley admitted, that they reached Fiji directly from North America seems crazy, but alternative models involving colonization from adjacent land areas don't really work for the time frame. Now here's the part that actually makes sense once you know which iguanas they were. Because the fact that the ancestors of Fiji's iguanas were desert iguanas is not a coincidence. Desert iguanas are among the most heat-tolerant and dehydration-resistant lizards on Earth. They evolved in one of the harshest environments imaginable. No shade, no water, searing temperatures. Their bodies are specifically adapted to go a very long time without fresh water and survive on minimal food. Scarpetta said, if there had to be any group of vertebrate in any group of lizard that really could make an 8,000-kilometer journey across the Pacific on a mass of vegetation, a desert iguana-like ancestor would be the one. So what actually happened? Scarpetta offered a scenario. You could imagine some kind of cyclone knocking over trees where there were a bunch of iguanas and maybe their eggs, and then they caught the ocean currents and rafted over. That's it. Storm. Trees fall into the ocean, iguanas hold on, ocean currents do the rest. The journey would have taken weeks, possibly months. The Pacific currents would have carried the vegetation raft westward toward the Pacific Islands. On the raft, some iguanas, possibly some eggs already laid in the root system of the overturned trees. And then, land. Fiji. Newly formed volcanic islands almost certainly still bare of competition when the iguanas arrived. The geological timing lines up remarkably well. The researchers estimate the iguana lineages split approximately 34 million years ago, roughly when Fiji's islands were forming. This suggests that as soon as land appeared where Fiji now resides, these iguanas may have colonized it, Scarpetta said. What happened after the landing is one of evolution's most elegant stories. The iguanas that arrived found an island ecosystem with virtually no competition and no significant predators. An evolutionary blank slate. Over millions of years, they diversified. From one desperate colonizing group on a floating log, four separate species eventually evolved. Today, Fiji's four iguana species, all in the genus Brachylophus, are bright green, beautifully marked, and found nowhere else on Earth. All descended from that one accidental storm-blown colonizing group that rode a log from North America 34 million years ago. And those descendants are now endangered. Fiji's iguanas face serious threats from habitat destruction and invasive species. The crested iguana is critically endangered. The animal that survived 5,000 miles on a floating log that colonized a brand new island 34 million years ago is now fighting for survival again. The iguana story is remarkable on its own, but it's also part of a much bigger picture about how life spreads across our planet. Scientists call it transoceanic dispersal, animals crossing oceans not through planned migration, but through accidental rafting on floating vegetation. Monkeys reached South America from Africa on similar rafts. Rodents colonized the Caribbean the same way. The Galapagos got its giant tortoises through an accidental float. Every time we think we understand how isolated an island is, some animal arrives on a log and rewrites the rules. And at the top of this list, the longest, the most improbable, the most spectacular, is a desert iguana from North America, who didn't plan anything, who didn't choose this, who just happened to be sitting on a tree when a storm hit 34 million years ago, and ended up founding an entirely new lineage of life on one of the most beautiful island chains on Earth. Sometimes the best journeys are the ones you never meant to take. That's this episode of Toon of Time. Drop a comment. Does the iguana story make you rethink how isolated different places really are? Subscribe for new animated latest discoveries. See you next time.